Pierce Johnson, Braves reliever, kind enough to come up and join us. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Hey, what would happen if you had to play for the Yankees? If it all had to go?
Oh,
I didn't think of that.
Well, I might come back as like Peter Johnson and, be a new prospect, right? Look 12 years old, get rid of the beard and the long hair. I'm not sure my kids would recognize me. So,
what would your wife say?
Honestly, like I've brought up cutting my hair, shaving my beard. She's like, go ahead, do it. And then my son said no because he wanted to grow his hair out like me. So I did not shave my head this off season. So I'm bringing the hair today for you guys.
Thank you. Good. I very much appreciate that. Now, we were talking a little bit during the break. I can watch you pitch once you come back to Atlanta, but I can't watch you pitch here. And I'll take you back to a couple of years ago. We were sitting in this very press box, and I was watching the live BP session with Ian Anderson.
It pains me, this story.
And I said his slider, and Michael Harris said it later, his slider was off the charts. And what happened? Tommy John surgery. So I cannot. Chris Sale was out here the other day. He was out here last year. I have to have my back to the field. So I can't really say or judge anything you're going to do in spring training because I don't want to put you in that same position.
Yeah, let's just, when I'm throwing that day, can you just not come to the field? Yeah. That'd be great.
This is what we do. We actually have him face that wall. It's just too much for him, and it really pains the entire city. Every time he thinks something's going well, you know the word mush. Capital M, capital U, capital A, S and H.
It might be better that I bash you, but I won't do that. Pierce Johnson is here with us, so obviously you're going to be counted on a little bit more this year with Jimenez being out, and I'm sure that's something that you kind of mentally prepared for in the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just part of the game, right? The injuries happen. But I kind of want to go talk about the fact that he did what he did on the knee that he had at the time. I mean, I don't think it's been talked about enough. The guy had an absolutely phenomenal year, career year, was punching the world, throwing in high-pressure situations, and did an absolutely incredible job for us. So we wouldn't have been in the situation we were in at the end of the year if it wasn't for Joe and Iggy, holding it down at the back of the pin. But, I'm up for the challenge. We got, Bummer coming back, Dylan. We got some other guys in camp. They're going to be vying for some spots. But, I'm excited to be a part of it, and we had a great pitching staff last year. So
tell us the difference when quote unquote, you've made the team, as opposed to being a guy who's got to impress maybe on the backfield with a hope to get a jump over to a field like this.
Yeah, I was that guy for a long time, and it's hard because you got to show up to spring training at 100%. You got to be ready to go. Game one, even bullpen one, and you're just kind of every day you're kind of fighting for your supper, and it's hard because you're facing this lineup, and then you got to go out and you're probably playing on the road more often because we're not sending our guys all the time on the road, and so you kind of have the crap into the stick, and you don't really get to have the luxury of being drawn out in spring training and having the time to build up and face batters and maybe take a day off here and there. You're literally on the grind day one throughout the end.
So you pitched in a lot of these situations before TrackMan? Have you always had TrackMan as you've been a professional, or was that a tick after you started?
Yeah, a tick after I started. Baseball's changed a lot since I signed. I was signed in 2012, and I think TrackMan, honestly, was probably 2016 was the first year I really saw.
So what does it do? Give me the good of it, give me the not so good of it when you're a guy trying to make a club.
The good is if you have a pitch or pitches that are kind of off the chart, right? Spin rate, velocity, VAA, which is vertical approach angle. Some guys, throw more from their shoulder. Some guys throw from really high. There's certain things that kind of differentiate each pitcher. For me, it's my curveball, right? That's kind of what I live and die on. And it's one of those things that was always off the charts for me. Now, on the flip side, if you're a guy, and this is no offense to Chavi, right? But if you're not throwing very hard, if you're not spinning the ball at a crazy rate, if you're not doing certain things, TrackMan's not going to say hey, you're this, amazing pitcher. But Chavi is an amazing pitcher, right? He knows what kind of pitcher he is, and he doesn't stray away from it. But also on the flip side, I mean, you got guys coming in spring training and seeing the TrackMan, and they're just humping up, trying to throw as hard as they can, trying to spin it as hard as they can.
That's what I'm nervous about.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that everybody's throwing on it in the offseason, too, and that's where injuries can happen, too. When you're trying to ramp up too fast, or you see this guy throwing this hard, and you're like, oh, I got to get there, and you're doing stuff that you're not capable of doing at that point or really ever. That's where things can kind of go wrong for guys.
Pierce Johnson, Braves reliever, is here with us. We are here in Northport all week long covering spring training. So how does your routine change over the years? You're a guy trying to make a team, and now you're a guy on a team.
That's a good question. I kind of like the mentality of I have to make the team. Kind of that way I'm really focused on the little things that I need to do right, whether that's, preparation, recovery, taking my bullpens incredibly seriously, which I've done my entire career, right? I haven't been a guy that you show up and you just get to, kind of mosey on through spring training and get prepared for season. So I train pretty hard in the off season to get as prepared as possible. And for me, if I can show up and I feel 100%, which I do, it just kind of makes it easier because now I'm with my big league coaches, with the big league catchers, with my team, and if we see some things we want to correct, I'm not trying to ramp up and correct things. I'm just trying to correct things.
I won't name the guy's name, but I was down here one year where a guy made the team to go north. He was a little bit hurt, and then he threw, and then they said, we got to shut him down. It's the worst feeling in the world because you don't want to do it, but you're so desperate to make a team. You're so desperate to be a part of this. Talk about the evolution of pain versus injury and the conversations that you have now as an adult when you might not have had it when you were younger if you were a little bit beat up. Because if they ask me to take the ball today, I got to take the ball today. That doesn't necessarily play anymore in the big leagues because you can't go down. You have to be healthy enough. The days you're healthy enough to pitch, you pitch.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you got to do whatever you can on a day-to-day basis to be prepared to take the ball, whether that's mentally, physically. And I think because I've played as long as I have, I know the difference between sore and hurt. Right. I know the difference between, all right, I can, extend long toss a little bit more today. Maybe I take it a little lighter. It's really knowing your body and having good communication with those around you, right? Your pitching coaches, your trainers and stuff like that.
But if you're 20 years old sitting in A ball, you're taking the ball, right? Isn't that sort of...
Pretty much. But also at the lower levels, what I don't think people understand is that you're kind of pitching on a routine. It's not like, hey, we're up by 2. It's going to be our 8, 9, 7, 8, 9 guys. You know what I mean? It's, hey, this guy needs to pitch this day. This guy needs to pitch this day. So it's not the same. And then you kind of get thrown in the fire. You get called up to the big leagues, and it's like, hey, man, I was throwing every other day, once every 3 days. I maybe had a back-to-back. Like, I don't think I threw a back-to-back in my career until my very last outing in AAA in 2017.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Here you are. So you're second full season with the Braves. Take us through that trade when you come over from Colorado or, any major leaguer. How long does it take you to kind of settle in? Because there's a lot of moving parts, I would imagine.
Big time. I didn't have enough contacts on that road trip. It was literally the tail end of our road trip with Colorado. And we had just flown from Miami to D.C., and they called me the morning of our first game in D.C., and they were like, hey, we just traded you to Atlanta.
Do you see this coming at all?
Actually, it kind of blindsided me a little bit because I didn't really have great numbers. I had thrown really well in save situations there because Bard ended up on the IL to start the year, and I was the closer for a little bit. But I didn't really throw great, especially in Colorado, being a breaking ball guy. And I was like, there's a chance I could because I'm on a 1-year deal, maybe, replenish the minor league system with some prospects. And, yeah, they called me, and I ended up here, and I couldn't be happier.
How quickly did they send jerseys for your kids, or was that a you get? Because I saw your wife and kids in the Battery. I was like, man, that turnaround was quick. They had Braves jerseys on with your name on the back.
Yeah. This organization does an incredible job of taking care of families, and honestly, that's one of the reasons I wanted to come back. There's nothing more important to me than family, and the way the Braves treat their families here is second to none, and it's just truly a pleasure playing for a first-class organization.
Do you think, and it's their organization now, you're here, do you think Colorado can ever fix the pitching thing? Who do we get? Who do we draft? They tried drafting guys who went to high school there. They've tried almost everything, it seems. Is it possible to put a staff together and keep it intact for a few years?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, the guys that they have, too. I think Marquez, honestly, is a potential Cy Young candidate from the stuff that I saw from him. And I know he got hurt early, but I had faced him in the NL West for years, and he's been a phenomenal pitcher. I mean, Freeland's an absolute bulldog on the mound. Senzatella is an absolute ground ball machine. They got some really good prospects coming up. Feltner's been there for a little bit. It's just one of those things that you always have to adjust. And I feel like those guys have to find what works in Colorado, whether it's sinker, four-seam, slider, curveball, whatever it is, and then really kind of harness it and have guys be able to make those adjustments, because when you go from Colorado and you're pitching at altitude and then you go to, St. Louis where it's incredibly humid, or you come here and then you go to Minnesota and it's cold, and there's always these adjustments you have to make, and they're more extravagant there, because when you get back to Colorado, it's like, well, my curveball's not breaking, my four seam's not taking off like it would, my sinker's not going as much. So if they can figure out how to harness and make the right adjustments on a series by series basis, I think they'll be just fine.
So we talked about your family. How old are the kids now?
5 and 3.
So do they realize what Dad does for a living? Has it registered with them?
My son, it has.
Yeah.
My daughter, it hasn't. She's 3, and she's more into Wicked, like the play, and not as much baseball.
Right.
But
where do you rank in your son's eyes? If we're going to do, you told Marvel Universe. Who do you sit in between in terms of heroic?
He's a big fan of the Avengers, right?
Yes, huge fan of the Avengers. I think Iron Man has an arm and a leg up on me. He thinks he's awesome. He wants to invent things and create an Iron Man suit. So I'm like, hey, buddy, that's not a real thing yet. But you know what? You work hard. You do all the things, and maybe you can be Tony Stark one day.
Are you behind? You got to be behind Captain America too. With all due respect.
I have better hair.
Interesting.
But it's probably Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, me.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad. I beat the Hulk, which is crazy enough. I never thought that would happen.
Listen, Ant-Man really does. Your kid doesn't even.
Honestly,
Ant-Man doesn't.
He kind of likes the movies. Honestly,
really.
I think because he gets really big at times, and he's like, "Whoa, he's bigger than the Hulk." So I think he's kind of drawn to that a little bit.
Well, hopefully it's going to be a big season this year. How soon after last year do you kind of forget about everything that happened? Is that a routine that you have every year? You got to just forget about it and kind of focus on the next year?
Yeah, but I like to relish on the things that went well. I didn't have a good August, September. I'd thrown a lot of curveballs, and my curveball velo had dipped, and obviously I was throwing it 70% of the time, so guys were kind of sitting on it. So I mixed in more heaters at the end, which seemed to be successful. But for me, it's one of those things where you get to the off season, you take your 2 weeks to decompress, and then you figure out the things you did right, and obviously try to correct things you did wrong.
If I'll ask you personally, automated strike zone, and then what do you think pitchers? If it was one man, one vote for every pitcher in the big leagues, what do you think the vote would be?
No.
No.
I'm going to go no. It's just one of those things, too. It's in AAA now, for what I've heard from a lot of people, is that guys are literally just taking all these pitches, whether it's close or not. They're pretty much walking their way to the big leagues. And, for pitchers, we have to have stuff that's swing and miss in the zone, right? And at the big league level, there's guys with some absolutely incredible stuff, as you see on a daily basis. But it's one of those. It's the human error too, right? It's the umpire. It's the taking away the defensive catcher who's really good at framing. I mean, Travi and Murphy were incredible at that, right? I mean, Murphy's a big body. He's going to steal strikes. Travi had amazing hands. It's just I feel like it's taking the art away from the catcher. It's taking the pressure away from the umpire. And it's one of those things that, like, pitchers are going to find a way to adapt at some point. But why take away the human error? There's going to be human error in this game, and it has been in this game since the conception of it.
And what about the guy's got his zone is a little bit up. As long as he's consistent, I can deal with that. Mm-hmm. That's the other part that I think, sort of day-to-day umpire-catcher, your relationship, I sort of feel like that's going to be taken out of the game, and the game becomes a little bit lesser.
Exactly. And, the game is always trended in different ways, right? Like, there was big, get the ball down, sinkers down and away, down, just get ground balls, and then it was like, hey, four seams at the top of the zone, and then the cutter was implemented, and then,
and here comes the launch angle.
Yeah, and then all this stuff, and so, like, it's always kind of a cat and mouse game between the pitcher and the hitter, and you're kind of taking that away because the pitchers are going to figure it out at some point, right? But I just love the human error to it. I love that. It's the game's not perfect, but it's perfect because it's imperfection, So for me, I'm out on it. I pitched to it a couple times on a rehab assignment in 22, and it's a little frustrating at times because I'm a four-seam curveball guy. But if it comes out, we'll have to adapt and overcome.
So before we let you go, we talked about analytics and launch angle and the human element. What do you say to the analytics people that say there's no difference between the first inning and the ninth inning? You would know how to answer that question better than anybody else, I would imagine.
Hey, those last 3 outs are a different animal, man.
Thank you.
I absolutely love it. When I got to close, it's a totally different situation. I mean, every pitch means something, right? But at the end of the game, especially in a tight game, it's a battle, and those 3 outs are tough to get. And that's why when you have someone like Iggy at the back of our pen, and you have all the faith in the world in this guy because he's so good at what he does, it's nice to have that kind of anchor at the back end of a game.
So just then mention the 8th inning guy, because let's say 9th inning, if you're a real 8th inning guy, those 3 outs aren't easy either, because you got to get the ball to him usually with a lead to ensure that we win the game. And I don't think 8th inning is for everybody either, personality-wise.
No, it's a tough task too. And honestly, when I was the 8th inning guy in Japan, I noticed I faced the heart of the lineup a ton. It's just how the game always ends up at the end of a game. It's going to be, you're going to face 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it may be. You're going to be facing some really, really good guys, and that doesn't take anything away from your closer. But what I've noticed is you're going to be facing some of the big dogs almost every single night. So you've got to be prepared and know the scouting report and just be mentally and physically prepared on a daily basis.
Does the entire restaurant stop when you walk in to a place in Japan?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was fun. It was, honestly, the food was incredible. I loved it, but it was a great experience.
Take getting used to?
Not really. Honestly,
did you eat anything raw? No, so steak.
Oh yeah, the steak was out of this world.
Okay.
Almost ruined it here, which is crazy because
better cows.
Steak.
They got better cows.
Better cows. Honestly, it was phenomenal.
Did anybody put anything on your plate, even if you were adventurous, and go, brother, that ain't happening?
A couple times. I did try a lot of things, though. Some things I never thought I would ever eat, and I ate it, and, actually some of it was pretty good.
It's not going to work for you. He eats 3 things.
I got my peanut butter and jelly at the house, and, brother, I am ready to go.
Pizza and meatballs.
That's where his hair went. That's why he doesn't have any hair.
Pierce, great hair, and hopefully you have a great season. Thanks for coming
Thank
on.
you. Thank you
really
for having
enjoyed
me,
it.
guys.
Thanks.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Pierce Johnson of the Braves with us.